Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of Lessons of the Woods by 10 Point Whitetails. I'm your host, Dillan Porter. With me is my co-host, Kyle Weber, and we're going to talk about some things. Good things, maybe bad things. Depends what you've done. Have you done bad things? We're going to find out today. We're going to judge you. Maybe. Or at least judge what you do. Something like that. Is that kind of what we're talking about, Kyle?
Great intro, Dylan. Great intro.
I'm working on it. Just got to keep getting better. So what are we doing?
I have no idea.
Oh,
No,
shoot. It's one of those episodes again. Guys, we
uh-huh.
try to know what we're doing. We're just not very good at it. So the off season's hard. It's hard to come up with content. So we're struggling to figure out what do we talk about, because we can't go plant food plots yet. But Kyle does have an update, so we will talk about that. We can't go plant food plots for the most part. It's too wet and soggy. It's raining every other day. We can't go sit in a tree stand. We can't really go scouting because too wet and muddy. So like we're just kind of stuck in a rut. Sometimes literally. Kyle maybe even got stuck. He didn't tell me if he did. I'm making that up. But he might have. Because I see some pictures that had a lot of water on them.
My entire driveway to the land is flooded. So there's a little wetland or pond that gets high in the spring. So high it's gone up past the driveway. And I didn't want to drive the truck through it because I believed it was that deep. So I was like, I got my muck boots on. I'll wade through the water, step over a tree, whatnot to get over to the other side, which is dry. Well, I was walking across like a 12-inch tree that was underwater, and I slipped and went straight down right to the crown jewels, and all I could think about was my phone. So I reached down into my pocket. Luckily, I wear TrueWorks, which if you look them up online, shout out to TrueWorks.
Not a sponsor.
They are water resistant to a point. So I reached in as I went in the water and pulled the phone out. The phone was dry, but then the water went down my pockets. Very cold, ice water. Trudged through that, got to the other side. The problem was at the end of the day, coming back, I had to do it again to get back to my truck.
You should have just drove your truck through it. It's not a Ford. It would have made it.
It was 4 feet deep. You know.
The air intake's plenty high. Just don't stop.
So, but the reason I was out there was I frost seeded our frost seeding. I've done 2 different sections now. Initially, we plowed a bunch of snow and I frost seeded that little area. But since then, the snow has now melted. The food plot's clear. And I frost seeded the rest of the big food plot. The little food plot is still full of snow. But I finished frost seeding the big plot. And then I took basically 2.5 acres of seed of clover and chicory and walked up and down all of my logging roads. And really the only reason I did that was because now I just added 3 acres of seed, 2.5 acres of seed without having a food plot. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
There's no canopy. So it's getting plenty of sun. It's getting the most sun it'll get all year. And once that clover and chicory get some roots and establish, they'll hold even in a pretty dense shade area. And since they're getting the head start, they might outcompete the weeds and the grasses and stuff like that. Now, the tactic, everybody's like, well, now you have a bunch of food everywhere. Deer can eat it anywhere. Based on what I had last year with the browse pressure so high, they're going to start out and work their way tighter, right?
Mm-hmm.
So they'll start on the logging roads as they meander down them. They'll start on these little patches that I seeded. All summer they're going to eat on that, giving my food plot maybe a chance that they don't kill it. So that during hunting season, everything else out in the woods is mowed down to nothing. All that's left is what's at the plot, and then hopefully that draws them out during hunting season. But so basically with the food plot, about 4 acres of seed went down. I had a guy ask me today what to use. I recommended some domain products, overhaul, no BS. hot chick, and comeback kid, which is chicory, clover, overhaul, and no BS have a kind of a mix of annuals and perennials, but they're all shade tolerant, clover, chicory based seeds. And he's
Mm-hmm.
like, well, what do I do? And I was like, just get the leaves off, get to some bare dirt, and seed on that. Let the frost, let the rain that's coming um, do its thing. But I did recommend that he overseeds. And we talked about overseeding with Jason. But when I said overseed, what I mean is increase the rate of the seed that you put down. So if you have a half acre jug of clover, you should use that on 3/8 or a quarter acre of area, because not every seed's going to hit dirt, not every seed's going to get germination. Your germ rate's going to go extremely down, 50%, etc. So if you're not going to get a germ rate of 100% and you're going to get 50%, you should double the amount of seeds you put down, and you'll still end up with an adequate. Anyway, so I told him to overseed for that reason.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a quick way to get some food out there this spring. And that's why I did it. Is we hurt for tonnage. Our deer are starving, long winter. The little bit of green that's already on the food plot from last year's clover
Mm-hmm.
is being mowed down already. So we want to.
Your goal is to increase the food amount to hopefully house more deer there. So yeah, they might eat it where you don't want them to for hunting purposes, but if you have more deer, increases your odds of everything.
And this August we'll plant an annual turnips and whatnot to get the fall draw to be where we want them to be. But right now, mid June, I don't care if they're going out of the sanctuary up to the logging road and eating on that, then going back. I don't need them there. So, but northern Wisconsin food is the biggest thing. First step on any of our consulting is put the food down. So I went out there, trudged through some water. Mike, the realtor, he was out there, took some pictures. I text him and he goes, "How'd you know?" And I'm like, "Tacticam." And that leads us into what should really be the topic for today is what cameras do, because recently I believe it was Kansas made it illegal to.
Was it Kansas or Kentucky?
I don't know.
A state within the lower 48 made it illegal to use trail cameras for hunting purposes. Did they specify, Kyle? Do you remember? Was it public land or public and private?
Oh, it was just, I'm Googling, but it was just on public land. On March 9th, 2023, the Kansas Department of Wildlife and Parks voted to prohibit the use of both cellular and conventional trail cameras on all public lands in the state. This move aligns them with a growing number of states banning trail camera use in some capacity. That also includes. Let me see here. I just seen it. Come on.
I think Minnesota was considering a rule along these lines or something else just as goofy not too long ago. It might have been the use of cell cams period or trail cameras period, but it wasn't, if I remember correctly, it wasn't just for state land. It was for all. So you got to believe that Tacticam and Moultrie and Realtree or whatever all these camera companies are, they're probably pushing really hard lobbying against this type of action because they're going to lose their customer base.
So this puts them in line with this is Kansas, Nevada, Arizona are the Nevada and Arizona are the only states that have a full ban on use of trail cameras for hunting purposes. So that's public, private, anything. So that's Nevada and Arizona. Montana, Utah, Kansas, New Hampshire, and Alaska have partial bans prohibiting the use of wireless or cellular cameras during the season, public or private land. So in some way, shape, or form, Montana, Utah, Kansas, New Hampshire, and Alaska ban trail cameras in some form. Nevada and Arizona have a full ban. So my trail camera showed me that Mike went out on the property and took some nice pictures to list it. Again, it's going to be for sale here in a hot minute, and I basically have 2 offers on some other land to start working on. And we'll see how all those dominoes fall. But that would be really interesting to shape up the next project. Anyways, the topic that I want to get into is how do people feel about the state in which our outdoors has become with comparison of technology. Do people think trail cameras should be illegal? Let's start with trail cameras. Cellular trail cameras has changed the world.
Mm-hmm.
And up until last year, I had never used one. Now I could use 20 of them. All right, so I'm for it. I think it is fair to say it can be illegal on public land for the same reason you're not allowed to, in some ways, shape, or forms, in some aspects, keep tree stands out on public land.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know what the rules are in Minnesota. I
think they gotta be taken in at night.
I think ours has to be 24 hours before the season, 24 hours after the season. So you can leave it during the hunting season. Okay. So there's limitations on public land. You can't leave it up all year round. Obviously, you can't cut trees down to put a tree stand up. You can't put a box blind in there. You can't drive your four-wheeler in to drop off our TR Outdoors blinds. That's on a week. There's limitations to it.
Mm-hmm.
But on private land, you can put Taj Mahal up there if you want.
Yeah.
So I think there could be a consideration for private land owners being able to do whatever they want.
It should be. It's your own land. You pay taxes on it. You bought the land for hunting. You should be able to, within reason, do whatever you want on there.
So how do you feel, Dylan, about the trail camera usage? Do you think the fact that technology has changed? The trend is going crazy,
mm-hmm.
and it's on every aspect. It's on crossbows. That technology is insane. Muzzleloaders. That technology is getting better. Vertical bows.
Mm-hmm.
That technology is crazy. Trail camera technology.
I heard several years ago, probably almost 10 years ago now, that our technology doubles every 6 months. That's exponential growth. That's insane what we're able to do. I mean, look at right now with the world around us and Chat GPT and these other AI systems. If you have Snapchat, you now have an AI in your phone ready to talk to you, which that's a whole nother discussion. I don't know how I feel about it yet. But our technology is changing very quickly, and it's good to keep up with it. It's good to know how to use it correctly and live in the modern world. But where do we draw the line on this is too far to where it's not, I hate to use the word fair, but that's what it boils down to. So there's a lot of arguments here, right? One could argue that for true fair chase, or for truly to be fair, you should only use what God gave you. Hands. Okay, I don't know about you, but I ain't catching a deer anytime soon by hand. I'm not fast. I can't do it. So then you can argue, well, God gave us a brain. Okay. With our brains, we've invented from spears, knives, bows, rifles, high-powered rifles, crossbows, trail cameras, etc. We've designed all this stuff. So the argument's really going to boil down to, in most cases, I can see not leaving it out on public land. That makes sense to me. It's public land, sorry. If you want to have your trail cameras out, buy your own land. I can see that argument. I'm not saying that's 100% the right argument, but I can see that argument. The reason that they don't like trail cams in Minnesota, which right now there's no laws on them that I'm aware of, but when this was brought up in Minnesota, their reasoning was you have an unfair advantage, which, okay, poking a deer 600 yards with a rifle is unfair. So that's just a dumb argument. But you're changing how you hunt based on what you're receiving on your phone, for cell cams specifically. Okay. Well, regular cameras change how you hunt too. So if you're going to use that argument, regular cameras change how you hunt. So how much is it going to change how you hunt if, and this is where it gets, what's the right word here? It's not really feasible to change how you hunt. So if I'm sitting in a tree stand and I get a ding that the buck I'm after is at my other location 600 yards away, I can't get there in time or quietly enough to cut him off. 99% of the time. So that doesn't work. Because the argument used to be you can't use walkie-talkies or cell phones while you're hunting. That is on the books. You can't use them while you're hunting. You can't call your buddy and say, "Hey, psst, I just saw a buck over by your tree stand." You can't do that. That's illegal because it changes how you hunt. Now everybody does that. It's really pretty much impossible to enforce that for the most part. So,
Right.
would this change how you hunt? It would, but it's not exactly feasible to put into motion to use this as the way they're concerned about people using it. Does that make sense?
I, that's the threat. That's the trail camera conversation. Then you talk about the vertical bow conversation. You talk about the compound bow, or the crossbow conversation.
And the arguments for technology on a vertical bow is the better the technology is, as long as it's helping you more efficiently, more accurately kill the animal, all for it. No reason to be against it. But now, if your vertical bow is shooting 200 yards, that brings us into the argument: are we losing tradition of bow hunting? Which tradition's a tricky word.
But then you talk about fishing, the new sonars and the 360s and the graphs, and I mean, you could be fishing and you can go, "Oh, there's a crib I didn't know about," because you see it on the 360. Oh, look at there's a fish on the crib. I can see it.
You can drop a waterproof GoPro down on clear water and just spin it. I don't know if people do that or not, but
Yeah, well, so
I
I
mean,
guess so the argument here, the argument I propose to you, Dylan, in the aspect of hunting, what is the threshold? When do we say that is no longer what it was? And when does the government step in? So that's what Kansas did, right? And I agree. My argument would be different private to public. I've hunted public, I've hunted private. I've owned land, I've not owned land. I think if you pay taxes and you own the property, you should be able to an extent, to a threshold, hunt it the way you want to hunt it. If it's Titan box blinds throughout the whole thing, hunt out of Titan box blinds. I don't care.
mm-hmm.
If it's over a pile of corn, I don't care. If it's using 16 trail cameras on 40 acres, I also don't care. That's your land. That's how you want to do it,
Mm-hmm.
in my opinion. As long as you're not trapping or capturing or you know injuring the animal prior to hunting it, it's got free will to leave. It's got free will to come back in.
Mm-hmm.
I don't care whether you bait, tree stand, blind, whatever. It's your property. You own it. I can see the government and the agencies going, "Hey, public land. We don't want to leave trail cameras out overnight because of the theft and the hunting strategy. We also don't want to allow you to leave tree stands overnight or out of season because then you kind of claim a spot."
And that's the
If I
argument with
put
trail cams too, is you claiming a spot.
I put a trail camera on this birch tree, my tree stands up in this oak tree, my spot. So if I say every night you have to pull them both, which would make no sense because trail camera, blah blah. But hey, I'm an agency and I'm telling you that you have to pull all that stuff each and every night. It's not your land. You don't pay the taxes. Actually, the taxpayers pay the land taxes. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
I'm okay with that. I'm okay with that. If you choose to hunt public land, that's what you have. Those rules you have. You choose to hunt public land to make it fair for everyone. The same person that can't buy a camera or can't set up a tree stand, sits on a stump, etc.
Or who doesn't live
That's
nearby that shows up the day before.
that's the then that's the best part. What happens if I'm on public land? I set up my tree stand and a camera, my spot. Then Joe Blow comes in on public land and goes, "I'm going to hunt right here, 50 yards from this guy's stuff, even though I don't know it's there."
Mm-hmm.
But I get all mad and huffy puffy because you're on my spot. Well, I didn't know you. Anyways, the argument is, where's the threshold? I would say the threshold for public land is, where's the camera? There it is. Here. And the private land is like here.
Yeah.
That's the thresholds. When a guy has a fence around his 40 with 3 gates open, puts 6 trail cameras on those gates, gets a bing that a deer walked onto his property, he runs up to the hill 600 yards with a power rifle, shoots it. All right, now technology has changed it. Yeah, I don't care if it's your private land or not. That's not.
And that was something I was thinking about too earlier too when we were starting this conversation. We've heard about people, particularly one individual I think who has a 8-foot fence for keeping deer in, like we have at my dad's place, on 3 sides of his property, and then the other side's open to the road. I have a problem with that because number one, it's different than a deer farm. At a deer farm, you own the deer. You didn't take them from the wild. You purchased them. They are
They are
yours.
agriculture.
They are agriculture. In Minnesota, other states are different, but Minnesota, whitetail deer agriculture, if you have purchased them and own them. You cannot purchase them from the state of Minnesota. You cannot take them from the wild, nor should you, nor would a deer farmer ever. But when you're fencing in 3 sides, and you're like, well, I don't want my neighbors trespassing. That goes above and beyond what you need for your neighbors trespassing. You're obviously doing that to keep deer in a specific spot. So now their only escape is to cross the road and get hit by a car. That I have issue with. That feels like it's above that private land threshold. It's no different than setting a big bear trap. Because essentially they can't leave. I mean, they can, but it's difficult.
And, I mean, you talk about Texas. There's a lot of deer farms down there that are high fence and low fence.
Mm-hmm.
There's a difference. If I post a deer and go, hey, I shot this deer, it's a high fence deer. The standard is different than if I go, hey, I shot that deer, it's a low fence.
Like, and low fence typically means like 10,000 acres of 4-foot fence.
Yep.
Well,
and it's managed and it's private and it's managed by the owner. Sure.
The fence really is not doing anything. A 4-foot fence doesn't stop a deer. But it's 10,000 acres, so it's keeping everybody out.
If I had 10,000 acres, I bet you there's a deer that never leaves my property.
Oh, absolutely. Probably 1,000 deer that never leave your property. 10,000 acres is a lot.
So, yes, the aspect of putting an 8-foot fence on 40 acres on 3 sides, only allowing the one side open that is road facing, house facing, the claim of free
range doesn't really apply.
Free range or fair chase tends to get dirty. And that's when I would say that's tapping on the threshold of when the government, when the agency or government should step in on controlling private land.
And that's perfectly legal to do. Perfectly legal to do in Minnesota, from what I understand. You're just putting up a fence. And if you said, well, I got those 3 sides for my horses, and then I run a hot wire across the road because I think it looks better. Still keeping your horses in. It's legal.
Yeah.
I don't like it.
So we talked trail cameras. Now we've kind of talked about fences. We've talked enough about baiting. I think I don't care, make baiting illegal. I don't care if you make baiting illegal across the whole thing. I would argue about feeding in the off season.
Mm-hmm.
But I would also argue in any way benefits the private land. If baiting on public is illegal, but baiting on private is legal. But then I would argue 2 gallons is a ridiculous, arbitrary number. But we talk trail cameras. So do you think trail cameras should be used on public and private?
I can see the arguments against using them on public. On private makes perfect sense. There's no reason to not to use them on private. It's basically just you're surveying the land. You may be busy. Maybe you don't have time to go scout every day. Who knows? But
maybe you're watching a chunk of property that you can't visit every day.
Yeah.
And you got it on your road to see if anybody trespasses.
It's not applicable to say, and that's still not the word I'm looking for. There's a word I'm looking for, and I can't remember what it is. But it's not really useful to say, well, you saw the picture on your phone, you're going to hunt different now. Well, by the time you get there, it doesn't matter. So unless you're patterning a deer, yes, I can see how that makes sense. But then you can't say, well, we don't want cell cameras. Because that was Minnesota's issue. No cell cameras, regular cameras are fine. But on public land, that brings us back to you're claiming your spot. It can be seen that way. But what I would argue is on public land, you're leaving it there, it's possible to be stolen. That's just fact. Too bad for you. Very rarely do they catch those guys. It sucks. But I would say there should be a season for trail cameras on public land. Because why not, right? If you say, well, until August 15th, you can have trail cameras on public land.
Until
but that'll help you.
Season.
That'll help you see where you're hunting. Why would you want to go hunt? It doesn't make sense for a government agency to sell you a tag so you can go hunting, buy land as a government agency for you to hunt on, and then say, we don't want you to know if there's deer out there or not. Go hunt, have fun. We don't care if you see anything. We don't care if you shoot anything. You paid us for it already. Why can't we say, well, from January 15th to August 15th, you can put trail cameras up, and most people won't put it. Well, okay, summer months, whatever. Pick a month. But then if you don't have time to go scouting right before season or any scouting, you can start saying, okay, there's deer here anyway. This is a good spot to sit. And I know we can read the sign and stuff too. You can go out there in a weekend and pick up just as much information almost. Well, you can pick up tracks and sign. But I think a season for trail cams on public land would make sense. And then just don't be a jerk and steal somebody's trail cam. Thoughts?
Yeah, I'm fine with that. I think they should have the right to use it, but I could see them saying, "Hey, this is the property. This is the 12,000 acres where you're not allowed to leave personal items out in the woods." Like that argument, I get.
Mm-hmm.
You can put your tree stand up and you can hunt out of your tree stand, but when you get done, you got to take it out. No private property on public land. Okay, fine. Trail cameras are off. You can't have them for scouting, etc.
But having a season for trail cams would negate the I'm claiming this spot. It's I'm scouting this spot.
Yeah, no, I'm saying I'm for that. That argument would work. I just that's the threshold for the public land.
Mm-hmm.
I think you have to. I don't think you can have that argument. I think during the hunting season, you can have a trail camera out. Some of these trail cameras aren't even used for wildlife at this point. I mean, they're legitimately like on the road or up by the tree stand where people break in and do some dumb stuff.
Yeah, there's a kid on TikTok and YouTube whistling Diesel,
Yep.
I think.
Yep.
He had some stuff stolen and he caught him because he had a trail camera up. A trail camera.
It's interesting you say that they never get caught. I've had 2 cameras stolen, and I've actually gotten both of those cameras back.
Okay, but one of those was you knew where to get it.
Oh, no. I've had 3 cameras stolen.
Yeah.
I had one getting taken, but luckily I had 2 cameras on the area. I got a picture of the person walking with my camera in their hand. Like, hello.
Red-handed, literally.
The next one, I had a picture of the person who took it, and I knew who it was. I want it back.
Yep.
The next one you're referencing was the warden. I knew he had it, so I went and retrieved that. So yes, my 3 cameras that have been stolen, I've retrieved them, which is pretty impressive. But I know lots of people.
If it's not a cell cam, it's hard to get back.
Yep, the first one wasn't, but I had 2 cameras on the same area. He stole the one, walked around the trail, and I got a good picture. Put him on Facebook, blasted him, didn't know who he was. I felt so bad.
What? Why did you feel bad? He stole from you.
The people on social media are not nice.
True, but don't steal stuff. It's pretty simple rules. But anyway, getting off topic. Other one that really intrigues me. Okay, so I want to see what you think about this. Scopes on muzzleloaders. Minnesota started allowing that, I think, within the last 4 years.
I think. Let's talk about weapons.
Okay.
I think the acceleration of vertical bows, crossbows, and muzzleloaders, which includes using the scopes and the quick loads and the caps and the muzzleloader is not what Jason Say was talking about, a flintlock rifle that they have a season for flintlocks. That's so cool. But the muzzleloader we shoot is not a muzzleloader anymore. Just they're not.
Well, by definition, yes. It loads through the muzzle.
But throwing a scope on it, it just adds to it. You add a scope to a crossbow, and the crossbows do 450 feet, 500 feet a second. It's so ever changing. When is it again the threshold? Scope on a muzzleloader. Sure.
So here's my argument for. I have horrible eyesight. I got denied from a government job because I can't see well enough without my contacts or glasses on. Starts getting dark, not too dark to shoot, still within legal shooting hours. I can't see the front sight. It disappears. A scope I can still see through, but you're still limited to a muzzleloader's capability, which even as far as technology has come, if you're shooting 200 yards with a muzzleloader, that's really pushing it. 250 maybe I think is the farthest. For me, I don't hunt where I can shoot that far with a muzzleloader anyway. If I'm muzzleloading, I'm normally planning on shooting 50 to 100 yards. So the scope gives me the ability to see better and more effectively, efficiently kill the animal. I think it's fair. Have I done it yet? No. I haven't muzzleloaded since this rule came out. I borrowed my muzzleloader to somebody who then put a scope on it and took my sights off, and then took their scope off and gave me the gun back without my sights. And I can't for the life of me remember who borrowed this gun that I've never shot a deer with. But okay, that happened.
Left a gun in the woods?
Nope, I didn't do that. Somebody accidentally thought it was somebody else's gun and delivered it to somebody who then gave it back to me 6 months later. They're like, I don't think I bought this gun. Are you missing one? I'm like, yeah. But
so I would say a scope on muzzleloader seems. I mean, we're talking optics at that point. Sure, I think that's still okay. You have a scope on a crossbow. The crossbow's cocked. It's loaded. It's ready to shoot at any point. Pull it up, trigger, or safety, trigger, boom. You've killed something or shot something.
My concern with crossbows, and I've maybe said this before, when you hold a crossbow, it feels like you're shooting a rifle. And it's not a rifle. Folks, crossbow's not a rifle. They take shots they'd take with a rifle because they're looking through a scope. And they wound, in my experience, more deer are wounded with crossbows than with actual bows. Just because you take a shot that, oh, I'm holding a gun, I can take that shot. It's your instinct. You've been hunting for 20 years. It makes sense. You can blast through the front shoulder with a 300 Win Mag, sure. You can't do it with a crossbow. That's my argument with crossbows. I think they should have a season, not the whole archery season. I think there's a place for them, but they are not archery. They're their own thing. I think they
should have a red dot or open sights.
It'd be nice if we got away from the crosshairs because that gives the feel. Because they don't even need a. Do they even have zooming crossbow scopes? I have no idea. I've never even looked. Do they have an optical zoom on them?
Yeah. Well,
you don't really need that. You're shooting. You shouldn't have that because you should be limiting your shot to 60 yards, like 60. You would with a bow. You can shoot 60 with a bow. I know guys who will shoot 100 with a bow, but they practice their craft 100%. I've pulled off shots at 60, not on deer, but on targets. So that's what I would say. Now, you can't legislate how far somebody can shoot because that's just not going to happen. You can't do it. But if you pulled off the optical zooming scopes, now they're limited to how far they can see and shoot comfortably, and we might have less wounded deer with a crossbow.
I agree with your muzzleloader. I agree with your crossbow. I definitely think a crossbow should have a season because I don't think you're. The point of having a season for a bow that is so long is because you might have 5 or 6 times that you see your deer, but all the things that have to happen to harvest an animal with a bow, they have to come close enough, they have to be broadside, they have to give you a proper shot. The weather has to be right, the wind has to be right. Like you might have 5 or 6 instances where you see your deer, but you can't harvest them because of whatever the limitations of a bow hunt.
Yep.
Once you put a crossbow, your range increases, your accuracy increases, you have a scope so you can zoom in. You have velocity that you haven't had yet with a crossbow. All of that increases. So now No, that deer came in at 60 yards and left. With a bow, you couldn't shoot him. Now that deer come in with a crossbow, I can shoot him. So I don't think you should have 4 months or 3 months like you do with a bow with a crossbow. I agree. A season is required for that because of how that has increased in technology and the equipment has increased and such and such.
Yep. But getting back to the argument where we're saying we're losing tradition, that's a really tricky word to say because tradition could be a longbow to some people. Tradition could be a flintlock to some people. So tradition is what? Tradition is, be nice to say like the last 40 years, but I don't know where the line is drawn on tradition.
I think the agencies or the government should step in. I do think they should control, and they got to control the. If somebody offered 1,000 feet per second crossbow right now, somebody would buy it. So you have to tell them not to, right?
Yep. You hear that, world? What? Kyle is asking for the DNR to step in more. He wants more regulations. This has never happened before.
I definitely think somebody of a higher power should set thresholds. And I may not agree with every threshold that is set. In this case, Kansas prohibiting trail cam usage on public. I'm okay with it.
It's public.
It's public land. It's their property to manage. And if I go down the road, Joe Blow down the road, 320 acres. Hey, man, I want to hunt your property. He goes, okay, fine. Help yourself. I don't want you to use trail cameras, and I don't want you to bait. That's my terms. No trail cameras, no bait, but you can hunt my 320 acres all you want for bow season. I go, I appreciate that. Thank you. I'm not going to go use a trail camera and bait because that's against his rules.
The landowner doesn't want you to.
I understand that public land is technically yours, blah, 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 but it's managed by an agency.
It's owned by the state.
So, in that case, if they say, and they have the right to say, not to use trail cameras, fine. But a DNR agency telling me I can't put a trail camera out on my property, now that threshold is different. Yes, if you have fence around 3 sides and you have a trail camera at the end of the fence watching the deer walk by and going, he's in there today, I'm going to go sit. Which, to your argument saying it doesn't help, I could argue it does. If I wake up in the morning, I have 3 sides of my 40 fenced in.
Well, 3 sides fenced in, yes, that's a different story. But
so then now the trail cameras are at the end of the fences, and I watch big mossy horns. I wake up in the morning, big mossy horn walked in. I watched him walk in on my camera. Ooh, I'm going to sit this morning. Get up and sit. I shoot that deer. Did that trail camera help me?
Yep, but that requires you having three sides of fence up. That's not
Fair.
Always a situation.
Right.
But then you can pull out the argument too, well, if a guy's got river on 3 sides, he's hunting a peninsula, how often do the deer swim the river? They actually do quite a bit. But kind of the same deal.
But when it comes down to private land, at some extreme, at some threshold, which I would consider 3 sides fenced in and a trail camera on the pinch point, I think you should have a free-for-all for your it's your property. You can do what you want, I think. So that's the threshold difference, I guess. Yeah. Trail cameras, technology is going crazy. There's nothing we can do about it, and as long as there is a demand to do it, like I said, 1,000 feet per second crossbow, somebody would buy it. So the government or the DNR or the agency has to say, we're not going to let you do that. You can't shoot that.
1,000 feet per second crossbow loaded would be freaking terrifying. Just sitting behind it. That's so much kinetic energy stored in there. It's just like, it's like a little bomb's going to go off.
We're going to see it. Even these bows that they're making now, these vertical bows, they're 350, 360, 380 feet per second. Excuse me. They could make one that does 425.
I think I've seen 400 plus.
Have you?
I think so.
The technology's out there, and as long as somebody's willing to buy it, they're going to continue to R&D and make it.
Yep.
Somebody should step in at some point. Yes, I agree. Like trail cameras maybe shouldn't have an instant setting. Maybe it should be once a day, whatever time you want it to send it to you. It sends you all the pictures it took. Maybe that's the limitation. So you get all the pictures at 7 o'clock every morning. Still helps you, but
It's too late to do anything.
because it is Tacticam's instant. I mean, it's
Real
instant
time.
as it can be.
Yeah.
I think there's like a 5 or 10 minute delay, but
And that's really not hard to manufacture in on the computer side of things.
so in that case, I would that would be the threshold, right? They're telling the manufacturers, Tacticam, Spy Point, Spartan, they sell cameras like, well, you can't have an immediate feature. It has to be 24-hour pause, for example. Public land, no, you're not allowed to use it. You can't keep your private property out on public land. Okay, fine. But private land, the threshold is definitely higher in my book. And it's for all the topics.
Mm-hmm.
If I want to use a crossbow, I can use a crossbow. If I want to use a bow, I should be able to use a bow. If I want to bait or feed on my property, I should be allowed to do it. If I want to use trail cameras, I should be.
You want to put in a
You,
food plot, clear a shooting
yep,
lane,
yep.
put up a tree stand. I mean, the threshold's way higher for what you're allowed to do on your private land than your public land, and that's how it should
There,
be.
there's we talk about fences, right?
Yep.
We established Wits End Ridge. We established the ridge top with a berm. I mean, we basically made a fence, something they're not going to climb over. It's a natural debris, blah blah blah. But we made it so they can't go that way.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody told me that was illegal, I'd be pretty upset because it's my property. I can put a tree where I want to put a tree. But there's a group. It's called the Whitetail Group, and they do consulting down, I believe, in Kansas and Iowa, Illinois. But I've never seen a consultant that relies so heavily on um, artificial.
Hardware
No,
means.
artificial means in which they make deer do certain things. Like they come in with dozers, skid steers, excavators, and stuff like that, and they will pick a line and drop the trees down, and then stack all the trees next to that and make a berm so they have to walk out in a specific spot, 30 yards from their tree stand, downwind of them, and like. And I love the show. I love the group. Like I do enjoy the content. But my point is they manipulate the entire thing. Yes, maybe they don't put fence up, 8 foot fence, but they maybe fix 4 foot fence in certain areas and don't fix it in other areas. So at one point is manipulating your property too far. I put up a berm.
Mm-hmm.
I made it so the deer don't want to naturally jump over that berm. Am I in the same boat as that guy with 3 sides of 8 foot fence?
So
We
here's a.
both manipulated.
You both did. So here's a dumb argument. I am not. I personally am not okay with 3 sides fenced in of a whole 40. I think that's dumb. But if you stuck a 200-yard stretch of fence in your woods, yeah, you're pushing them to pinch points. It's making it easier, but that's still pretty big. Where your berms, it's not even 100 yards, and it's kind of on a food plot, and they have essentially they have almost 180 degrees of area to leave, right? Instead of,
Yeah.
I mean, if you had it on 3 sides, I'd be like, Kyle, what are you doing? They have one way in and one way out. I don't know how I feel about that. But you have it on. They can leave anywhere they want. You're just making it so they can't come from behind you, and there's nothing over there anyway for the deer to come from or to go to. Yeah, that's an interesting one. I don't know how I feel about it.
It's what's the category,
Yeah.
and I don't think I pushed. I mean, I've talked about fences. I wanted to put a fence on the north end more because that was the property that most of the pressure went to or it came from, other neighbors and hunters
Mm-hmm.
over there. And actually, I went to my property line and stood next to my sign and I looked over and they have a bank spline 20 50 yards 25 50 yards away from from my property line. I'm like, oh, I could see it because there's no
Yeah.
canopy. Which they're hunting on the property. I don't necessarily care. But I've thought about a fence there on that north end. I've thought about a fence on the south end that covers the road to maybe hinder the amount of deer that jump over my fence. I'm not talking 8-foot fence. I'm talking a 4-foot T-post fence.
Yep. And I
Three
have
wire.
deer can jump over that if they want to, so I have no problem with that. The 8-foot fence, that starts to get weird anywhere you put it, because then it's
Right.
so forceful. A 4-foot fence, it's suggestion. Your berm is suggestion. If a deer really wanted to, they'd go over it. But also, your berm is going to rot and get
Yeah.
lower
Yep.
every year.
Yep.
And you had to
can,
put the trees somewhere. So your options are a big pile in the middle or spread them out. You're not hauling it all out of there. So that, it feels better to me.
well, in that, so the argument, the government agencies have to make a decision when to jump in. My argument at this point is public land, super low threshold.
Yep.
For okay, this is too much. This is because I couldn't build that berm on public land.
No.
I'd be in big trouble.
Oh, yeah.
But on private land, you should they should have a less of a say / that okay, this is enough. It's enough. Threshold should be higher. And as far as trail cameras go, I don't think we've hit that. I don't know what the next technology is going to be. I don't know what it's going to be.
You can FaceTime your deer.
I mean,
hey buddy, how you doing?
I don't know what the next thing will be.
I got it. I know.
What?
We'll have a robot next to the trail camera. Robot arm that shoots the deer for you.
There you go.
Aim via an AI bot. You don't even have to go in the woods anymore to go hunting, guys. We solved the problem.
Just a big guillotine as the antenna. But it's interesting to think about all these, and everybody's got an opinion, and some of them can get pretty aggressive. Baiting, feeding, that's a good one to argue about. Crossbows are a good one to argue about. Trail cameras have advanced since I started hunting so much. I don't know what's next, but it is definitely the hot topic on. If Wisconsin right now said no trail cameras on public land, a lot of people would be mad.
Mm-hmm.
If they said no trail cameras at all, I'd be like, I'm breaking the rules because I want to check my roads. I want to protect,
Well, essentially they become security cameras at that point.
Right. And
so you just paint them white, and then you put a label under them, not for monitoring animals, security purpose only.
Yes. And, at that point, it's like, okay, if you won't let me monitor my land for trespassers, I am going to put a fence up. 4-foot, barbed wire, 3-strand, whatever.
Yeah.
But then when their feet are on the other side, I can go, did you miss the fence? So.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's a tricky thing, but this is probably not the best way to say this. My base argument is, are you killing more deer than you're supposed to? No? Okay.
Is the technology increasing the efficiency and
ethicalness of the kill?
Yeah. Like, the muzzleloaders now are better than the flintlocks of Jason Say. So, has it increased the effectiveness? Sure. Mm-hmm. Has it increased the proper way of, ethically killing an animal? Okay, fine. I'm on board. Has the technology increased to a significant amount that it has enabled people of which lesser skill to still poorly kill an animal, Like you mentioned, why not have trail cameras out in the woods? How are we going to know if there's any deer? Well, there's sign, there's poop, there's trails, there's fur. There's things that tell you without technology that there's deer here. It's just where that threshold is, man. I'm not mad at Kansas for doing what they did.
So say that it allows people of lesser skill to learn how to hunt and be able to hunt effectively. That also leads to an argument. Hunter recruitment's at an all-time low. Maybe we have to make it easier.
I think that's what's pushing the crossbow. Because the crossbow allows more elderly and younger to get involved and buy licenses.
Yeah.
I think that's why they support it, because it's a
elderly, younger, and disabled
Yep.
to
So
hunt for
it's
4 months.
welcoming. They welcome it because it increases the people that maybe wouldn't hunt or couldn't hunt. It allows them to, and that's fine if that's the purpose of having a crossbow. Sure, I own a crossbow. I do. There's sometimes in December, I don't want to draw back a really cold bow. I want to,
Mm-hmm.
Um. So in that case, it's okay. And that used to be you had to have a disability card, or you had to be disabled, proof of disability to use a crossbow. Then they opened it up to everybody. Okay, I'm fine with you opening it up to everybody because I think if I want to shoot a deer with any weapon, I should have the opportunity to do so. If I want to slit its throat from jumping out of a tree, if I want to use a spear
I'm not
like Tim
100%
Wells,
sure either of those are illegal.
no, but Tim Wells with a spear, I'm 100% on board with that.
Jared
That'd be
Allen.
fun. But the season has to be reflected. The hunting strategy needs to be changed.
It needs to be realized that crossbows, and we're not just picking on crossbows, it's just an easy example, but it needs to be realized that crossbows are not a bow. They are their own category now.
What about, yes, exactly. It's the same way a muzzleloader is different than a rifle
Mm-hmm.
in ways. Crossbow's different than a bow.
Yep.
What about limiting? I thought we were kind of rounding out of here, but
We are almost rounding out.
okay. One last thing. Limitation. So they're going to limit cellular cameras on public land or cellular cameras in general. What about limiting the power of a scope on a rifle? What if they said you can shoot any rifle you want during rifle season? It has to be a what, 9x14?
Yeah, limit the power of the scope.
Yeah. What if they made that a regulation? You can't have a 9. Oh, what is my vortex? I had a box somewhere. A 4x9x50 by blah blah blah.
Yeah, you can't have a military grade sniper scope to shoot a mile. And that would make sense in Minnesota and Wisconsin. However, Colorado, Montana, the big elk hunting states, that doesn't make as much sense because you need to be able to see and shoot farther sometimes.
So what if Wisconsin said you can't hunt with anything over what? Pick a number, 9 power.
Yeah. 9x14, sure. I don't know.
Would you say that's overreach, overstep?
That's what I use, so not really. But we got to be careful too because we don't want to lose all of our freedoms. So that's a argument too.
I want to pull out a 50 cal. I want to pull out a 338 Lapua with the biggest Viper Vortex Golden Eagle scope, for shooting a mile. Can I? If I can shoot that little squirrel with the 338, am I allowed to?
Personally, squirrels are not a good argument for me because I can't stand them. Blow them to smithereens. That's fine.
Fair. Should I use a?
If you can hit a squirrel with a 50 cal, that'd be freaking awesome. I would pay to see that.
I don't think you need to. I think you just shoot in its general direction.
Probably. That'd be cool.
Anyways, it's a threshold argument. The trail camera thing is transitioning. Like I said, I think there is a threshold for each technology, but I think the public threshold is lower than the private. I think the private should be entitled to more freedom.
So I agree. To wrap this up, general consensus statement, folks. Don't get mad at your fellow hunters for how they choose to hunt. If they're following the law, that is the law. Those are the thresholds we have been given. Are those thresholds always correct? Maybe not. But those are the thresholds we have. If you have a problem, take it up with your legislator. Don't take it up with your fellow hunter and belittle them or despise them for how they choose to hunt.
Join a club.
Join a club. Figure out what you need to do. Just because they don't do it the way you do it doesn't mean they're doing it wrong.
I mean, if you join a club and you suggest the way you think it should be handled, they might send you down to lobby. They might send you down to call the legislator, the Senate, the whoever. And if they speak on behalf of you or you speak on behalf of other people, then you can change the direction in which these rules are
trending.
implemented.
The other thing to be concerned about, don't ask for too many rules so we lose all of our freedoms. That's another one. So keep those things in mind, folks, and we will be back next week for another episode of Lessons of the Woods by 10 Point Whitetails. Every Friday at 7 p.m. USA. That's a thing too. Maybe. We'll see. New episodes drop every Friday at 7 p.m. Usually on YouTube, TikTok, and not TikTok, YouTube, Facebook, and Spotify. But we may drop a couple of episodes here and there this summer that are actually my dad talking to people that he's interviewing. But those will be Spotify only. So those do exist. We've already done a couple, but we might do them instead of our regularly scheduled programming because spring and summer is getting busy for us. Kyle's moving. Not sure where. He's just going to go pick a point on a map, drop down, do a little bit of squatting, put up a tent. No, that's not what he's doing. But life's changing, life's getting busy, but we're going to still try to provide content every week. So with that, thank you guys. Thanks for watching. If you have any questions, shoot us an email or message us on Facebook at 10 Point Whitetails and at 10pointwhitetails@gmail.com. And we will see you in the woods.